Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. It is the Fantasy Football Buzz podcast with the Commish, Cyclop. Guys, we're getting ready. It's 2021. Football season is what? We had 100 days from today or
That's right.
something like that. I'm very excited because I don't have the doubt that I had last year.
Last year.
And Cyclop, why don't you say hello?
Hey, everybody. We are excited to be back going into the 2021 season. And like you said, and I was going to bring up, a year ago, sitting in the same spot, we had no idea. We still had absolutely no idea what to think. Off-season camps weren't going on. We were in the middle of a really bad time. So this year, obviously, stadiums are opening up. Everything's opening up. People are going to be able to get back together again for drafts. It's an exciting time for.
It is. It is. I've got my season tickets this year, so I will be heading to games. I'm vaccinated and ready to mingle. So it's an exciting time for football, and it's been a very interesting offseason as well. Not just for football fans, but for fantasy football fans, because it just seems that the number of free agents, and not just regular free agents, but free agents in very important positions in your quarterback and your receiver positions, they've really changed teams, and it's going to impact fantasy football so much this year. And actually, that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. But before we get to that, I do want to talk about this year and what to look forward to with the Fantasy Football Buzz podcast. Of course, we have 2020. He's not with us tonight. He'll be joining us next week. But from now until before the season starts, we're probably going to do about a show a week. And during that time, we're going to get you ready for your fantasy football season. Everything from talking about free agents to draft picks to who you should draft, what players are going to be the guys this year. As we get into August and beginning of September, we're going to start doing some mocks with you guys. We'll invite some of the guests on to do mocks with us. So we've got a jam-packed off season, and we're ready to go. Brad, you're going to keep an eye on mini camp as well, and also camp and what's going on as far as during the off season.
Absolutely, there's a lot going on, and we just knowing that we're going to have football, it's even more exciting to watch it. Where last year we were watching it and not knowing. We're excited. We'll keep an eye on it, and like you said, there's been a lot of, and you said before, there's a lot going on for football, but also fantasy football. But really, to us, it's all one and the same, right?
That's true
for the most part.
Yeah.
So we're looking at every time there's a trade or a free agent signing, automatically we think of it as, oh, what's this going to mean for my fantasy team? How am I going to draft? Is this guy, moving up, moving down? There's all those variables that I think that's how I think when that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are not going to do your typical fantasy football show where we just read things that you could probably just find on the internet. We're actually going to go in depth with different teams, different players, controversial issues, things like why a certain player should not be on a team. If somebody's up for suspension, whatever the case may be, we're not going to shy away from it. We'll talk about it. We'll dig down. We'll get into it. And most importantly is you out there. We want to hear from you. That's why we have our toll-free number. You can call during the show anytime. Give us a call throughout.
Just so you know, it's actually saying Kenneth has been trying to call. I know your internet was down, so maybe you didn't turn that back on once it came back up.
Yeah, so I see it here. I haven't heard it, I guess, for whatever reason. But if Kenneth, if you call back in a few minutes,
we'll get you on.
We'll get you on for sure.
We've missed you, Kenneth.
Yeah, so anybody can give us a call, 772-800-BUZZ or 2899. You can speak to us, but we also, because we are broadcasting live through our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, you can follow us right now if you're not following us, but you can comment in the comment section, and we will take your comments and we will be able to read them live on the air as we're talking. We will address your questions. You want to have a question, if you have your drafts early, you have, whether it's dynasty, whatever format you have, we're ready to talk about it. We're ready to help you guys. And we do have somebody new joining our team. Brad, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. But don't forget, you can also email us if you're downloading the show on iTunes or on Spotify, all those places you can find it. You can also email us. So we'll put the email up there in just a few moments. So you can also email us and we'll get back to you on the next show, or email you back if you have questions about your lineups, whatever the case may be. So speaking of, we decided to go out and see what we can do about getting a intern / producer for the show, and we put it out to a group that we're both part of, and we put it out there, and lo and behold, within a day or two, we found a person. So we've actually both known this person for a while. Yep. I know it's weird, but I actually know his mom from many years ago. So without further ado, we have someone who's a student at the University of South Florida, and we are going to bring him on in just a moment. We've been trying to come up with a nickname for him, right, as the show producer and whatnot. And so we're thinking about it, and we talked to him about it. Do you want to go ahead and reveal that, Commish?
Yeah, I think we're going to go with a name that's already been given to him through the fraternity, and we're going to go with Belt Loops. So for whatever reason, and I know at some point during the year we're going to find out why, but for now, it's going to be Belt Loops. So if you hear us talking about Belt Loops, you know who we're talking about. We'll bring him on, we'll say hello, and then he'll go back into the background and continue to produce the show. And
there may be times where we refer to him as just Loops or Belt. Right. Who knows? We don't have to say the whole thing because it's so long. But welcome, Belt Loops.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Super glad to be here.
All right. And just so you know, we do have Kenneth on the phone, but Kenneth, I know you're holding, but we'll get to you in 1 second. I appreciate your patience here. But Josh, welcome to the show. It may not be the first or last time I call you Josh. It might just be Belt Loops moving forward, but for now, that's what we're looking at, and we do appreciate you joining the team, and it's exciting. We're looking forward to the things that you're going to bring to the show. And every good show has a good producer, so we definitely are excited about it.
We appreciate it, and like the Commish said, we'll have to get to the bottom of that nickname at some point, and not today, but hopefully it's appropriate for the show, which really nothing isn't. So we'd love to hear about it.
No, yeah, it's definitely show appropriate, but yeah, you'll find out.
That's too bad.
You'll find out eventually.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and put you back into your hole for now, and we'll move on with the show. And feel free to pop in if you got something to say or you got something going on. Just come and pop in and let us know. In the meantime, we have the Fantasy Football Buzz podcast #1 fan in the country, and it's Kenneth on the phone. Kenneth, how are you?
Oh, pretty good, guys. I appreciate the opportunity to be speaking with y'all again.
Of course. So I guess you got through COVID okay? Everything's good?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, here at the end of the month, I'm going to be doing a performance at a friend of mine's wedding.
Wow. All right. What kind of performance? Singing, dancing?
Rubik's Cube? Singing. I'm working on a song. It's a country song by a gentleman by the name of Brett Young.
All right.
Nice.
It's called In Case You Didn't Know.
Well, we didn't. So I'm glad that
that's a good segment for the show as well. Maybe.
And, I already have done fantasy football draft.
Wow.
Nice.
And I got my team up if y'all want to hear them. See who I got.
Sure.
It's a 12-team PPR. I got Dak at my QB, Saquon in at running back. I got Miles Sanders. My receivers are Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Evan Ingram, DJ Moore, and my flex, Ramsey and Robbie Gould.
Wow. Okay. So you
is the 12 team? How do you get those players in a 12-team PPR?
So you've got the all injured team that you hope are going to be fully recovered. So between Dak Prescott, Saquon Barkley, even Miles Sanders had his issues, right? You know, your receivers are
Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah.
Possible new starting QB for my Texans.
Right. And that's a whole other thing that we'll talk about.
We'll talk about them today.
Yeah, no, I like your receivers. I think you have some good guys at receiver, solid, not necessarily superstars, but some solid guys at receiver. Obviously, if Dak and Saquon come back to their forms, Dak doing what he started doing at the beginning of last year, and Saquon doing what he did in 2019 before he got hurt, sky's the limit. So sounds like a good team there, Kenneth.
And also, I was wanting to get your take in regards to, I don't know if y'all heard, but my beloved Texans just picked up Rex Burkhead.
Rex Burkhead, yep. He
just got with us. I just heard about it today.
Yeah, if you, Ken, if you just hang with us for a little bit, we're going to start getting into free agent. That's what our show is today, is free agents, that have been picked up in the offseason. And, I have a bunch to say about the Texans. So if you listen, that's part of it. So, if you don't mind just hanging on, but we'll get to that.
All right. How soon will it be before y'all start doing mocks?
Probably
in on it.
Probably in August. Probably near the end of August, we'll start doing some mocks. Or I would say middle of August.
Yeah, beginning into the middle of August, and we'll, sometimes what we might do is like a quick one at the beginning or at some point of each show. Just do a quick one, possibly, or we'll be looking at it.
Yeah, because I definitely want in on that.
All right,
you got it.
Absolutely. All right, Kenneth.
I appreciate y'all taking my call.
You got it. Take care.
Thanks, Kenneth.
So Kenneth was a good introduction to what we're going to be talking about today with free agents. Brad, do you think we should just jump right in? You ready to go on that?
Ready to go.
All right. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to start by doing it by position. I wanted to start at quarterback. And to me, one of the ones that'll have the most impact, the quarterback that to me is going to have the most impact in fantasy this year that was a free agent pickup is Matthew Stafford. Probably one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the league, has been for many, many years, mainly because of how bad the Lions have been, right? So
he's always getting pummeled. So it's, as good as his numbers have been, either he gets hurt or, they just, I don't know. His numbers have been great. And we went into last year talking about Stafford. And it's funny. I went and listened. I've been listening to all the shows from last year. And so we were talking about Stafford. And I had him like top 6 quarterback because the year before his pace, he had 19 touchdowns, however many games in before he got hurt. He was on like this crazy pace the year before. And last year, of course, gets hurt again. Their team kind of falls apart. Galladay, this.
So really what you have now is a switch, right, with Goff and Stafford. I don't know what Detroit was thinking, and we'll talk about Goff in a bit, but to swap Stafford for Goff to me is absolutely crazy. Now, if you're Matt Stafford or you're the Rams, you're
very excited,
right? Because Matt Stafford, had he stayed in Detroit, and again, we'll talk about that with Goff, he would have no receivers left. He still has no offensive line. Now he's going to a team that ended the season with the 3rd best offensive line in the league. They've got great weapons, right? With Woods, Cooper Kupp. They also picked up Deshaun Jackson in free agency. And I'm excited about the idea of Stafford. Now, the caveat with Stafford is the same caveat that we had last year, and that is health, right? He's older, we don't know. But if he has a good line in front of him, if he can pick up that playbook, I don't know. I think I'm looking at him. I have him as QB 13 right now, but with a high ceiling. I think that he could make his way into the top 10 quarterbacks, depending on how the season goes. I'm very excited to see what it's going to look like in preseason.
You know, when I start thinking about it, right? You mentioned, why did these two teams basically trade quarterbacks? And was it a Aaron Rodgers type thing that was kept behind the scenes, and they did it, right? But the Rodgers thing has come out now because maybe nothing has been done. Maybe that's been going on. Obviously,
Might have been
for
a
a while.
contract issue, a salary cap issue. I don't know.
And I think the Rams were kind of ready to move on from Goff as well. So for the teams, it probably made sense. Now, what happened? Let me ask you a question. What happens if you somehow have Matthew Stafford on your team from last year and you're in a keeper league?
Oh yeah.
Right? All of a sudden, he's
Okay.
on the radar.
The answer to that question is, and every keeper league is different, but the answer to that question is, you don't keep your quarterback unless you have Patrick Mahomes.
True.
Okay, and possibly Lamar Jackson. You don't keep your quarterback. And we're going to talk about quarterbacks now, but for as good as I'm thinking Matt Stafford might be, I'm still not drafting him until the 12th round. So remember, quarterbacks are a dime a dozen, and the difference between someone like Matt Stafford, right, and someone like Ryan Tannehill, you're not going to have that much of a difference, but you're going to be able to get both of them near the end of a draft.
Woods and Cup, both. I was looking at it earlier. I believe both had 90 or more catches last year.
Yeah.
Like one had 90 and one had 96.
Yeah.
And you have Higbee there, and you have Akers, who came on at the end of last year, who looks like he's going to be the guy.
Time out. Can we not mention Higbee this year on this show? Because every
week.
What?
Every week I'm bringing him up.
I even named my team after that MFer. And he goes ahead and
he's going to be like the herpes for you.
He really is.
Keep coming back. Every week we're going to bring it up.
Now I'll probably still draft him, but I'm very upset about the whole Higbee thing, and I would have won this year of Higbee. But okay, go ahead. So
anyway, insert Matt Stafford into that position, and I think all these guys. Add Deshaun Jackson, who stretches the field for Cup and Woods, and the tight end, and all of a sudden that could be nice. So I like that. It's a huge offseason swap for those teams. Too bad. Sorry for any Jared Goff owners, but hey, whatever you get.
Well, it's funny because when you think about you're drafting your quarterbacks, and you think about someone like Ben Roethlisberger, who year in and year out has performed, and he still was not drafted. Sometimes not at all. Sometimes at the end of the draft. So I think we're going to see the same type of thing here.
He'll be available late, and someone's going to pick him up, and as long as he can stay healthy, could be a great pickup where he's going to get you 25 to 30, maybe 25 to 35, 40 points a week in that offense.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So you know what? Let's just go right to Goff, actually, because since we're talking about Stafford and we were talking about what an upgrade that is.
Right.
Let's go to the bottom. Let's talk about the downgrade with Detroit. Not that Detroit was anything great anyway. But now they've lost Galladay, right? They've lost Marvin Jones, and their starting wide receivers are Ty Williams, Rashard Perryman, and Quintez Cephas.
Right.
Okay. Talk about a who's who of nothing. And Ty Williams hasn't been good this century. Since 2016, he hasn't done anything. Rashard Perryman, all the promise in the world, but never delivers. And Quintez Cephas, if you draft him, you deserve to have Jared Goff as your quarterback.
Yeah, the 16-team, league maybe.
Yeah,
but they did pick up Darren Fells, as a tight end, which is not exciting. I understand that, but he could see a lot of action because you don't have a lot on the outside. I don't mind the Perryman pickup. I actually think he's a pretty decent receiver. But again, with those guys on the field, it's not going to be exciting.
All you have to do with that Detroit line, all you have to do is rush Jared Goff, and
That's true too. And he's going to throw an interception.
That's it. And it's so funny because as we're saying this is the same stuff we said about Josh Allen last year. So you never know from week to week, but yeah, I mean, you go from one of the best quarterback pickups in Matt Stafford to one of the worst in Jared Goff. Not the worst. We'll get to that in a second. But let's get back to some of the good quarterback pickups. And probably one of my favorite players in the NFL is Ryan Fitzmagic. Fitzpatrick was absolutely magic when he did step in for the Miami Dolphins. And seeing him go to I didn't say Redskins, so I was going to say Washington, and then I stopped myself anyway.
Right.
But, he goes in, they pick up Curtis Samuel, right? They already had Scary Terry as their
McLaurin. Yep.
receiver. They also have Adam Humphries. And
who they re-signed.
They re-signed, and now they have one of the best offensive lines in the league. Who knows, right?
With a really good running back.
Yeah, absolutely. So is this the Fitzpatrick that was with Tampa Bay a few years ago where he was getting 500 yards a game? Right? Or is this the Fitzpatrick who will get you 10 TDs, but he'll throw 10 interceptions in the process? So on a fantasy level, strictly on a fantasy level, I have him as a QB 21. So he could be your backup quarterback. I don't necessarily see you relying on him in a 12-person league. He does not fall within what I would consider to be one of your starters. But he is definitely worth possibly a backup until you see what's going to happen with that offense.
When they're playing Dallas, like you expect those games to be a shootout at some point, right? Yeah, they have a pretty good defense as well. But Fitzpatrick, again, he's not going to be the first 10 or 12 quarterbacks taken, but you're going to take him as a backup because somewhere down the road, you're going to need a backup. Somebody's going to get injured, whatever the case may be. And he's a guy, just like 29 out of 30 teams in the NFL so far have wanted him on their roster.
Yep.
Right. So how many teams has he played for? Like 15?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like that.
Still going around.
Right.
Still making the rounds.
So the question with Fitzpatrick is he's going to be getting the ball out because they have receivers that they can get it to and push the ball downfield, which we know he likes to do. The question is he's going to have his 350 yards a game. He's going to have his maybe 3 touchdowns a game, but can you also put up with the 3 interceptions he's going to have in that game? Right. And that's always the question with Fitzpatrick.
Especially if you have a -2 for interceptions in your league.
Then it hurts.
It can definitely hurt. So the other 2 free agent quarterbacks that I want to talk about, I'm probably not drafting either one of them. And I think even as a backup, I don't know if I would draft them, but we'll start with Carson Wentz. The only one that to me is a possibility for drafting. I have him actually as a QB 23. So if you're in a 12-person league that usually gets 2 quarterbacks, he would probably be one of the last quarterbacks taken. He may be a free agent. And a lot of the issues with Wentz, other than the fact that we saw, obviously he's got injury issues. We saw that he's got decision-making problems. But now he's going into a situation where his wide receivers are T.Y. Hilton, who you just never know what he's going to do. He's not the same T.Y. Hilton from the Andrew Luck years. You've got Pascal, Pittman, and Campbell. Right? So I don't know. He doesn't have the weapons. Now, I know they didn't have great weapons in Philly, but at least they had Ertz, right? And Goddard.
Yeah, but you got to remember that, Taylor's coming on. He's got Mac. I'm going to go the other way. And he goes back to his coach that he had in Philly coming off his best year 3 years ago, in 2017, I think. So he goes back to a coach that's familiar with him and knows what he can do. That doesn't mean he can still do it. It just means he knows what he could do 3 years ago or 4 years ago.
Right.
Again, he's not going to be a first quarterback taken this year, but he's going to be a guy that you can maybe stash on your roster, get him really late, or pick him up after the draft, and he might surprise people.
Yep. Okay. I can see that. I see him as a backup. However, a backup that might end up on your starting lineup more than just the one time where your guy's on bye, right?
Right.
So
right.
yeah, I don't necessarily think you're wrong on that. And Wentz does have talent, and when he's on, he's on. It's just a matter of.
And sometimes you look at the division they're playing in with Houston and Jacksonville. That's four games right there that have potential nice numbers coming out of it if they don't run the ball 60 times in that game.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll go on to the last one I want to talk about, and not for too long, is Sam Darnold. And it's funny because he's going to a team that didn't have a quarterback last year. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater is Teddy Bridgewater, right? So I don't know whether or not they're upgrading, downgrading. I don't know how many people out there actually had Teddy Bridgewater on their team. But, there's no denying the fact that if Christian McCaffrey comes back healthy, he's going to turn a 1-yard pass into a 30-yard pass.
Right.
And that's going to happen 20 times a game. So if that's the case, then Sam Darnold might have some stats, but they have a bad line. Their receivers, he's reunited, right, with Robbie Anderson. So they've got Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore and David Moore. Nothing too dynamic, but they're not bad. It's not as bad as the Colts, let's say, or the Detroit Lions. It's not that bad, but it's not great. So the question I have for you is, do you draft someone like Sam Darnold?
No.
And hope for even though he's not a Jet, he still has that taint of the Jet on him.
Did you say he has a taint?
Yes, he has a Jet taint. They tried to upgrade their offensive line.
Yeah, yes, Josh. He said taint. So
they did. Wait. They got Pat Elflein, but that line is terrible. And if Sam Darnold was already seeing ghosts, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know if that's going to get any better. So
look, we know last year with Teddy Bridgewater in that offense, and Mike Davis, he played great. He played really well for several games.
Yeah.
And they still were able to get the ball out. But Teddy Bridgewater kind of became a sitting duck once McCaffrey was out of that offense. And he kept dumping the ball off to Davis, and that was great. But he just didn't really have the time to get the ball downfield in that offense for the most part. And Robbie Anderson had, once a game or whatever, he'd have a nice catch. And, some of them seemed to be circus catches, and then he'd catch it over a guy somehow and run for a touchdown. And that kind of slowed as well towards the end of the year. You throw Sam Darnold in there. If he can get his confidence back in Carolina, it's an interesting team. You throw McCaffrey in healthy on any team, and he's going to make it more interesting because you have to take linebackers and cover him. He's not a running back that you can let just run around. So it opens the field up. So, I don't draft him unless I'm super, super, super desperate. I don't see him getting drafted in many leagues. Who knows? Could he be this year's Josh Allen? I don't think so, but we'll see.
Yeah, Bridgewater, I think, ended the season around 25 out of 32.
Right.
So I'm not touching Darnold because there was really no upgrade in receivers, there was no upgrade in line, and there was no upgrade in quarterback. So I would stay away from that situation.
So belt loops. We will not change your name to Taint.
Yeah, please don't.
No, we won't.
Any remarks on the quarterback so far? Do you have anybody that you were looking at that you thought about that you could throw in here?
I mean, out of the ones you guys have discussed, I am really fond of the Ryan Fitzpatrick pickup by Washington. I don't know who their quarterback of the future is, but I think he's going to do what he did in Miami. Just being a leader, just doing what he's good at. I think it's really going to help that franchise.
He is going to be what, 50 this year?
Maybe
How old is he?
50.
Like 40, 39, 40, something like that?
I think Brady's older than him.
Well, yeah, but Brady's a freak.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy's just a freak. Yes, we know you're in Tampa. It must be Brady crazy around there.
It's crazy. It is crazy here.
I mean, that guy's a freak. We'll talk about him later. We'll talk about the Bucks later. But all right, Belt Loops, if you have anything to say at all, jump in whenever you want.
I got you.
In the meantime, anybody can jump in. All they have to do is give us a call, 772-800-BUZZ. Hopefully, it'll ring and I'll be able to answer. But give us a call, 772-800-BUZZ. We'll get you on the air. You can ask your questions, or you can always put your comment in Facebook Live or YouTube Live, and we will get to those comments live on the air. I was saying let's jump into running backs, but we kind of just need to put our toe in because there weren't a lot of running back free agent moves, right? We had James Conner, who went from Pittsburgh to Arizona. He's going to be probably Chase Edmonds' backup, or they're going to share complete running back by committee.
I don't know.
Is there anything? I mean, Kenyon Drake is gone out of Arizona.
Right.
So is there?
He went to the Raiders, right?
Yeah, and and that's something else. Eventually, I want to talk about, not tonight, but in looking at a lot of mocks, Jacobs has seriously dropped.
Yes. Yeah, he did not really look great last year.
Unfortunately. We'll talk about that another time. I think that he's a bargain right now at his ADP, but let's see how things go as we move forward. But back to running backs, Brad, did you see anything other than the James Conner move that is fantasy worthy?
So this is what a couple of things I was going to talk about that we didn't even talk about. But when we're talking about free agents, generally what we're looking at is players that move teams, right?
Right.
But there's a lot of free agents that signed with their own team. So you don't want to leave them out necessarily, right? Like you're talking about quarterbacks. Dak Prescott was a free agent, right? That's a pretty significant free agent signing, even though he's with the same team.
So was his ankle. Sorry, go ahead.
What I'm saying is, like, running backs, not that it's so exciting, but James White re-signed in New England. Now they add some tight ends. Yes, free agents from other teams.
I think they got 7 tight ends.
Only 2 good ones, though.
Yeah.
And, they get rid of Rex Burkhead. They get rid of some other guys, some other parts there. So does James White pick up some more, passes out of the backfield? It's not exciting, but you have guys like him. You have Marlon Mack resigned. Of course, he's going to be Taylor's backup. It's probably going to be more like an 80-20 split, is what I'm thinking there. Lamar, do you even know who Lamar Miller plays for or signed with right now?
With who? With
Lamar Miller.
The Raiders?
No,
I don't know.
What? Washington.
Oh, okay.
He's on their roster. All right. So, other than that, running backs, there was not a ton, but those are just a couple guys that re-signed with their own teams. But everyone else seemed to pretty much stay put.
Yeah. And it's funny because that's a position that you usually see a lot of movement. But
right. That's one of the trivia questions we had last year was there's only one. It was only one running back from, I believe it was 2017, so it was 3 years, that was on the same roster last year. Do you remember that trivia question? You remember who the answer was?
No, I don't remember the answer. But
okay, so the answer was Emmitt Smith, right? Ezekiel
Elliott, right?
I went to Emmitt Smith. Was Ezekiel Elliott from 2017. He was the only running back on the same team from that year. Not the only one, but the only one in the top 20 of fantasy, right? Or 30 of fantasy.
Yeah, so you usually get a lot of movement, but not now. Okay, so then, but on the other hand, wide receiver, there was a lot of movement.
Yes.
And I, going into the offseason, we talked about Kenny Galladay and Juju Smith-Schuster and Will Fuller, and I don't remember who some of the other top ones were that still stayed with their team. Even Marvin Jones was part of that discussion, and where they would go, and for how much. And I think it wasn't until late in the free agent period that the Giants grabbed Kenny Galladay, right? Because he was sitting there, and finally came to terms with the Giants. Maybe they wanted to make sure that he was healthy enough. And as always, with somebody like Kenny Galladay or Dak Prescott or Saquon Barkley, someone coming off of an injury, you have to be ready during the offseason to see what's going on in camp, see what's going on during preseason, to see if they're ready to go. Assuming he's ready to go, I've got Galladay as my wide receiver 20, which would mean that I would draft him somewhere in the 5th round. He goes from a pass-happy Detroit to a bad passing New York Giant team. Looks like Ken's calling here. Kenneth, hold on one second. So he goes to a team, the Giants. They only threw, and I found this stat the other day, they only threw for 189 yards per game. That's 4th worst in the league.
That's amazing that it's not the worst, but yeah, I guess
that's true.
I guess maybe New England was worse,
and they've got the 2nd worst offensive line from last year in the NFL, and we're talking about the Giants. And you would think, and going into the draft, everyone assumed that they were going to be getting one of the top offensive linemen. They had a shot to get Rashawn Slater. They had a shot to get Vera Tucker. Instead, they go with Kadarius Toney, who is a Gator. So I'm happy that Toney's in the NFL. But at the same time, the Giants didn't do anything, free agency or otherwise, to help themselves on the line. I don't see much coming out of Kenny Galladay because Danny Dimes has been reduced to Danny Pennies with that line. Now, Saquon is going to take some pressure off of that, right? If he's healthy.
It will, right, for a couple games.
Right. So where Galladay, going into last year, I had him probably in the top 10, in a wide receiver top 10.
Oh, he was taking her. Yeah. Absolutely.
Now he's down in the 20s.
Yeah, they have good receivers on that team. They have Slayton. They have Galladay. They have Shepard. They have Barkley. They have Ingram.
Tate?
They have what? Golden Tate? No, I don't think Golden Tate's with them anymore.
Okay.
I think he's a free agent actually at the moment.
Okay.
So yeah, it's interesting, but like you say, the offensive line, you still have to have an offensive line to get the time to get the ball out to these guys. And a lot of these guys are downfield guys. They're not getting the ball 1 or 2 yards off the line. So they need that time to be able to let them get into their routes to get the ball.
Right.
So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Yeah, around 20 is probably right. He's going to be one of those guys.
Not round 20. I actually have a 5th round, but I have him as wide receiver 20.
As wide receiver 20, right.
Right.
That's like, okay, he's there. He's a name that people know, so he'll probably go a little higher than he probably should.
Yeah.
Right, because he's a familiar name who's had, it seemed last year he was almost ready every single week to play, right? Yeah. Wasn't it like every week it was like, oh, he's probable this, and then he wouldn't play, and then they got to the point where they were so bad that I think they just kept him out.
Right. No, absolutely. The people I have above him, just so that we understand where he falls in this rank, I have him right below Robert Woods, and Chris Godwin, and who knows what's going to happen with Julio Jones and Mike Evans. So you see that there's going to be plenty of guys to pick instead of Galladay. Right. But there's also going to be a lot of good guys after Galladay. So I really think, at 20 is a good spot. You've got probably 10, 15 good guys under him and 20 good guys above him. So, Kenneth, let's get to you real quick. What's going on?
Hey, I just happen to have the latest rankings on the receiver spot.
Okay.
And I found out something very interesting. One of the receivers that I thought that was interesting was Michael Thomas, the receiver out of New Orleans.
Right.
He, according to the latest rankings here, they have him at 8. Is that a fair spot?
Yeah, I have him. I actually have him at 10. Look who's throwing to him.
Right. You have to look at it all around, not just that it's Michael Thomas. It's not the Michael Thomas from 2 years ago. He was hurt last year.
And it's not Drew Brees.
And it's not Drew Brees, and it's Jameis Winston or Hill, right?
Yeah.
It's just not going to be the same team. It's a completely different team without Drew Brees. So again, he's going to be a guy. Oh, Michael Thomas. Yep, I'm taking him. And I think it's going to be a boom or bust. Without Drew Brees last year, when it was Hill throwing to him, he was getting 8 or 9 catches a game, but it was for like 56 yards.
Right.
So it was very frustrating, and the touchdowns weren't there because he was running them in. So it was a little frustrating. Look,
I'm taking, let me go down the list here. I'm taking Tyreek Hill, obviously, Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, DeAndre Hopkins, DK Metcalf, Calvin Ridley, Justin Jefferson, Keenan Allen. I'm taking all those guys before I take Michael Thomas. I might, I don't know yet. I might even go with somebody like Allen Robinson or AJ Brown before I get Michael Thomas. So I think 8 to 10 is fair.
I hate to interrupt, but I disagree.
Okay. Which one do you disagree with?
When you said there was a receiver that you would take above, who was that? I
said possibly either Allen Robinson or AJ Brown.
Actually, I disagree with in regards to AJ Brown.
Oh, Corey Davis isn't there anymore.
Does have a bit of an injury issue.
Yeah, he's gonna be fine. Every receiver has injury issues, but Corey Davis is gone. So
Brown ended the season. Brown ended the season last year as the 9th best receiver in fantasy football, averaging 15.5 points per game for a total of 217 points, and that's with Corey Davis there, who it was either the AJ Brown game or a Corey Davis game. So there were games where he wasn't part of that plan. That's why he only got 70 catches, but he did great things with those 70 catches. So yeah, that's why I said possibly, because I want to see what happens during preseason. Jameis Winston has an arm. There's no doubt about it. And he's got an arm for the defense too. That's the problem. But as far as
how that arm for the offense, the head for the defense.
Right. So, that we'll see with Jameis Winston throwing to Michael Thomas. We're not saying don't draft Michael Thomas by any stretch of the imagination. I just think that somebody like Michael Thomas is going to probably go the end or, somewhere in the 3rd round, which is still good for a, wide receiver. He's going
to go top end of the 3rd round to the bottom end of the 3rd round, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, he's going to, right.
Because someone's going to grab their running back, probably a top-notch receiver, and then grab Thomas after that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so let's get back to our list. We talked about Kenny Galladay. Now, somebody who was actually the 6th-ranked fantasy football receiver last year.
Unbelievably,
because he wasn't around the first few games, if you remember, is Will Fuller, who goes from Houston to Miami. I have him as wide receiver 31, and that's the 7th round. And the question is, well, wait a second. If he was a 6th-ranked wide receiver last year, why do I have him ranked all the way down as wide receiver 31?
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
All right. Because it was kind of a product of the system last year where they had nobody else.
Right.
B, they go to Miami and they are going to try to plug him into this offense with Tua, who did not really show the affirmation to throw so far downfield. So is that going to be a possibility or not?
Okay. First of all, I disagree with you because when he did throw downfield, either the balls were dropped or they weren't in position. So in that sense, I think Will Fuller can do great. My problem is not necessarily with Tua, but the fact with the they've got Devontae Parker, Jalen Waddle, Preston Williams, and you throw in Will Fuller, Gesicki, and the Hunter, the new tight end, right? I just think that there's not enough balls to go around to have Will Fuller get the kind of games that he had last year. Will he have?
By the way, that's what Belt Loop says too. Never enough balls to go around.
So can't abuse the poor kid. He just started. We're gonna lose our intern. So yeah, that's I think Will Fuller is.
Can we abuse him? Really...
I don't know. I'd prefer not to be abused here.
All right, sorry.
You can't abuse him. He's a fraternity brother.
That's not abuse.
He, like me.
That's light hazing.
We were both presidents of the fraternity. Unlike you, Brad. So maybe you don't have the respect that you should be showing Belt Loops for being the president of the fraternity.
That could be.
Yeah, see, I quieted him up there. So I got your back, man. Don't worry. All right. So Will Fuller, yes, draft him. He will have fantasy impact. He'll be a wide receiver 2, borderline 3, in my opinion. But somebody that, unfortunately, because I'm in Miami and in our South Florida, and our league is mainly a South Florida league, he's going to go earlier than what he probably would have
maybe. You know, he's also had a history of injury issues. So obviously there's going to be, if he can stay healthy. And he seemed to last year. But again, it still seemed that it was like a hamstring or something. Every week it was a questionable.
I have a question.
Questionable. Okay.
I have a question that you may not know the answer to, and I don't know the answer, and I'll have to look it up. But I know he's suspended for the first game.
Okay.
To continue his suspension. Does that mean he can't be in training camp? I would assume he can be, but I don't know.
It depends on the suspension, but I think usually they can be a part of training camp. But
play the first game.
Yeah.
Which means I assume he can play in preseason then. But we'll see. I don't know. I'm looking forward.
I think those have always been different, those suspensions. Like sometimes they can, sometimes they can't, depending on what they were suspended for. I'm not exactly sure.
Okay, so let's move on. Let's talk about Curtis Samuel. Curtis Samuel, who kind of came on at the end of last year, right? He ended up being Teddy Bridgewater's guy. Once Christian McCaffrey got hurt, he needed somebody to be in that kind of that halfback position where you could either scat back, you can throw it, you can let him run it on a jet sweep. And Curtis Samuel, who didn't have a great beginning of the season, but he did end up as wide receiver 29 last year. I have him as a wide receiver 35. He's going over from Carolina to Washington. Again, Fitzpatrick will probably rely on him a lot. So, but to me, he's very similar to Gibson as far as what he can do from out of the backfield. So he's probably going to play more as a slot player. So I don't know. I don't see big things with Curtis Samuel. I don't think he's going to do as well as he did last year on Washington. But I would still draft him somewhere around the 8th round. I have him as a solid wide receiver 3.
Yeah, he goes back to, his old head coach, right? You got Fitzpatrick. Last year he had played in 15 games, 77 catches, 97 targets, so not too bad. 850 yards and 3 touchdowns. Yeah. So it wasn't overly exciting. He was that guy that he had like a big game, and everybody picked him up, and then he like disappeared, right? So yeah, he goes in with McLaurin and a lot of other hands to beat in that offense. So I'd certainly be a little weary of taking him too early. So like you said, mid rounds, kind of a guy. Could he emerge as like a nice slot guy, like a Wes Welker type there? Yeah, possibly. But it's not overly exciting to me.
Well, speaking of not exciting, the next receiver we're going to talk about actually is going to be in the same lineup as Denzel Mims, Jamison Crowder, and Elijah Moore. Talk about a really scary wide receiver group. Well, now you bring Corey Davis, who's a legitimate receiver. He definitely has talent, but he's going over to Gangrene. And last year he was a wide receiver 30, and that was with Tannehill.
Yeah.
And there were games where Corey Davis looked like Superman, and then there were games where he looked like Lois Lane. So, and the fact that now you have Zach Wilson with his racist mom, which has nothing to do with anything, but now you have Zach Wilson throwing with that offensive line. No, I mean, look. If you want Corey Davis, might be somebody you want to take late, 10th round, 11th round. I have him as wide receiver 45. There are 44 receivers I would rather have in the league right now other than Corey Davis. I liked him better when he was on Tennessee. It's a completely different offense. So personally, I'm not touching him.
He played in 14 games last year, 65 catches, almost 1,000 yards because he was getting a lot of long catches. And he had 5 touchdowns, so it wasn't too bad. But coming off the year he had before, no, he didn't have a good year. The 2 years before, because he had gotten injured. You were expecting more from him, but again, in that offense, when it features Derrick Henry, he's not going to do much. You're going to a rookie quarterback. Is it a San Diego type experience, or is it a no. I agree, and it's New York, and they always have a tough time. So I wouldn't really touch him. I don't even know if he's draftable, honestly, unless it's really late and you're kind of just trying to stash someone. So I don't put much into him.
Yeah. All right. So what else do you want to talk about on the? Is there other?
So I have a question for you. Okay, as I was doing some research for everything, do you know the team that now just offensive players, okay, did the most free, because we're talking about free agents, did the most free agent signings and I'm talking about offensive position players, not offensive linemen or anything else, but offensive players, not a kicker, wide receiver, tight end. So what team had the most signings?
New England.
No. But New England was like second. No, not second. They were down a little bit.
I don't know. Tell me.
So let's see if Loops has any idea. Loops, do you have any idea about that trivia question? So the most free agent offensive position players. It was also the same team that had the most free agent signings overall by a lot. And I can give you a little hint. They actually signed somebody today that Kenneth mentioned.
What, the Texans?
The Texans. The Texans, including Rex Burkhead today, had 12 offensive position players and 32 free agent signings overall.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Now, to keep that in perspective, the next closest was Jacksonville with 20.
Oh, wow.
Overall signings. Okay. And so it was 12. The Bills, the Pats, the Bucks, the Lions, and the Giants each had 7 position players.
Did the Texans get anybody that is fantasy worthy, that is going to make? Well, I mean, do we even know who the quarterback's going to be? Do we know?
Well, Tyrod Taylor,
be their running
possibly.
Back? I'm sorry,
possibly Tyrod Taylor. But the Texans, their picks, I mean, they have a lot of potentials and kind of has-beens, right? They picked up Jeff Driscoll and Tyrod Taylor, maybe Mark Ingram, kind of, fill in at this point. Phillip Lindsay, Now he's coming off a pretty bad year, but they had other issues there. Chris
That's why the Rex
Conley,
Burkhead thing just makes me scratch my head, because you think with
Right.
Mark Ingram and Philip Lindsay, with David Johnson starting. Okay, go
right?
ahead.
No, I know. Chris Conley, Andre Roberts, Alex Erickson, Dante Moncrief, Tawan Taylor, Philip Pharaoh Brown, and Ryan Izzo. So, I mean, maybe Dante Moncrief potential there, but that team's going to be a mess.
With Andre Roberts and Conley, I mean, they're going to start probably ahead of Moncrief, and even those guys are probably going to be second string to Keegan Judy and Randall Cobb and Brandon Cooks, and they drafted Nico Collins. So, I don't know what they're doing. I think maybe they found some spare change in the couch, because that's just
32. 32, but none of these guys, the highest one signed was, $5.5 million to Tyrod Taylor, could be $2.5 million guaranteed, worth up to $12.5 million. So none of them were big signings, all like $1 million, $2 million, maybe $4 million. So it wasn't huge, and that's with the defensive players as well.
Well, keep in mind they didn't have any draft picks, so.
That's true.
I mean, they kind of did, and they drafted a quarterback in the third round. So along with, now that they're going to have all these different quarterbacks, they have to figure out what they're going to do.
Now going back to that, I just wanted to throw some of those stats out there, because you start looking, and some teams had like 2 or 3 offensive players signed as free agents. Now, not including the draft picks and the other things, but that's pretty low. I mean, you had the Vikings, 2 offensive players, the Eagles, 2 offensive free agent signings, the Seahawks, 3. So, it's just so defensive heavy, a lot of these teams. Now, the one player that we didn't mention who was a free agent, maybe he was, I think it was a free agent, was Aaron Jones, who signed a 4-year deal with the Packers. Right? Now, you question, does he do that if he knew this whole thing going on with Aaron Rodgers?
I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, we already know that Adams has come out and said, he doesn't know what his future looks like because of that, right?
Right.
So who knows? But I think the 2 teams, and I want to talk about the teams that kind of won free agency. Like, who would you go with? I have 2 teams that I think really won free agency.
No, go ahead. Let me hear what you.
So I think Tampa being one of them, with re-signing a lot of it, right, keeping everybody together, but they had to re-sign these guys: Fournette, Antonio Brown, Godwin, who was franchise tag, but still had to sign him. Gronk. So a lot of these guys were part of the team. And at the end of the year, Antonio Brown was a huge part of that team.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think they won. And the other team, I think, that really won free agency was the Patriots. With the tight end signings, we know how they like to run those tight ends. It seems like they got 2 guys. They got Aguilar. They got the other receiver. I'm going blank at the moment. Now, Cam Newton, I don't know if that's a good signing or not, but they re-signed him. But then they drafted a rookie. So the guy from Alabama, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, I'm looking at this, not just you have a list of free agents, right? And you look at what team picked what free agents, and you look at those guys and you say, oh, those are good guys. They got some really good guys. But you can make an argument for somebody like, let's say the Chargers, right? So where was the Chargers' biggest problem last year? And it was their offensive line, right? So even though Herbert had a good year, he was constantly under pressure, and they had the worst offensive line in the league. So they went ahead, right? In free agency, they got Corey Linsley, they got Matt Fielder, they got Ibushi. They got guys that they're able to solidify that offensive line. So even though these are guys that a lot of people might not have heard of, right?
Right.
I think they could have won free agency because they filled the gaps, are the only gaps left that they needed to fill to take it to that next level.
Okay,
You know.
I understand that. On my end, I'm talking about position players, winning free agency and position players, not the entire mass of the players that they signed in free agency. So
Right.
I was looking at it in a little different way, but yes, I understand what you're saying. But yes.
All right. Now I know there were some tight end movements. Do you want to? I didn't write anything down, but do you want to?
Yeah, I mean,
Jonnu Smith went to the Patriots.
Patriots. You had Jared Cook go to the Chargers. That's a really nice target there for
Herbert. Yep.
Herbert. Thank you.
You had the Jaguars sign star tight end Tim Tebow.
Yes, and we should talk about that.
Yes, I almost want to draft him for fun instead of a backup kicker. That's hilarious.
So I guess the question is, will Tim Tebow be on the roster once opening day comes around?
Yeah.
And I think for ticket sales, yes.
Yeah, I think he will.
He certainly has athletic talent. And he can probably play any position on the field, right? Just for not any position, but he has the talent. He always has been a very good athlete. We know that. We're going to see if he wants to be out there and get hit, right? It's a little different than playing baseball or playing quarterback. I mean, you're a tight end. You're blocking. You're doing a lot of different things at tight end, and you're involved in every play somehow.
You know, it's funny. Last year there were maybe 3 tight ends, maybe 4 that you were confident in drafting. And I remember we talked about it. We talked about, tight end position. If you don't grab one fast, then you might as well just wait.
Right.
Now, I think you're looking at possibly 10, 11 tight ends this year. Obviously, they're not all Travis Kelce or George Kittle or Darren Waller, but you've got guys, and who knows what Kyle Pitts, and we'll talk about draft picks next week. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be very interesting, and let's see what's going to happen in New England. Is Jonnu Smith going to get the ball, or is it going to be Hunter Henry? So it should be very interesting to see what happens on the tight ends this coming year.
Yeah. Thaddeus Moss, Randy Moss's son, right, was picked up off waivers by the Bengals. Not that he's going to do anything, but it would still be fun to see Randy Moss's kid catching balls in the NFL.
Well, there's no more AJ Green, so you never know.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, yep. Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. I mean, certainly, are they trying to recreate Gronk and the murderer there? What's that?
Hernandez,
yeah. I mean, are they trying to recreate that?
Maybe.
Not 2 bad guys to try to do that. I mean,
Dallas,
it certainly worked.
Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz.
That's it, right? Yeah.
You never know. They just need a quarterback, and they might be into the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes. So who knows?
At tight end, we know that Cam Newton can make 5 or 6 yard passes. We just don't know about anything other than that. So if those tight ends are going out for little 5 yard, outs and ins, then maybe that works.
All right. So we've gone through the free agents. As of course, throughout the summer, we're going to talk more about the free agents and how they're looking in camp. But next week, we're going to get into the draft picks. We're going to see not just what teams improve themselves during the draft, but how that affects fantasy football and whether or not any of these guys are fantasy worthy. And it'll be interesting to see if outside of the first 2 rounds of the draft, are you going to have anybody that's going to be fantasy worthy? And to me, that's always the most interesting part of this, right? Did somebody grab somebody in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round that will end up starting and starring? So it should be very interesting when we talk about it next week. It'll be next Tuesday night, 8 p.m., same bat time, same bat channel. Guys, anything else you want to throw out there, say, before we close it for the night?
Josh, we want to welcome you. We're excited to have you for the season. You can email Josh with if you have any questions about being a sponsor for the show. And we are looking forward to having you next Tuesday and for the whole summer and football season.
Yeah. I'm super excited to be here. If there's anybody out there who is interested in becoming a sponsor, my email is on the screen. Shoot me an email and we'll be in contact with you. Other than that, that's all I have. This is pretty fun.
All right. Well, welcome. Thanks a lot. We appreciate it. And everybody be safe out there. And we will see you next Tuesday night at 8 p.m.
Good.